Good evening. I'm thankful that you're here. And tonight, we're going to talk about what pride can do. We're going to look at some scriptures, and I'm glad you're here with me. Let's dive right in. What pride can do. Let's look at some examples of what pride did, and then we'll look at how it can affect us today. So, first off, we're going to be in Daniel 4, starting in verse 24 through 37. We'll read it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. I'll talk about it a little bit. This is the interpretation, your majesty, and this is the decree. The Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like an ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass by until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, your majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people, and you will live with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like an ox. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms of the earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like an ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like feathers of an eagle, and his nails were like claws of a bird. At the end of the time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the people of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me from the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. Now, I wanted to read that whole passage because I think there's aspects of it that are important to talk about. First of all, to give you a little context, this was the interpretation of the dream of the tree. Nebuchadnezzar has this huge dream about a tree that's huge and broad and leafy, and animals are around it, and there's fruit in it, and it's an awesome tree. And then it's stripped of its branches, it's cut down, the stump is binded up, and it's all this symbolism, and Daniel interprets it for him. And when Daniel interprets it, he essentially says, you are going to have your kingdom stripped from you, and it will not be completely gone or be able to be obtained again, but you're getting ready to be separated from people because of your pride. And he warns him. Essentially, he says, humble yourself before God humbles you in this way. And Nebuchadnezzar doesn't do it. He is arrogant and speaks out into the air about how his might and power built all this great stuff. And essentially what he's doing is he's taking credit away from the Most High. That's what our pride does. We take credit where credit is not due. We try to say, oh, I've done this. Instead of giving glory and honor to God, we are doing it to ourselves. We're saying, I've done this, and I can do this, and look at all that I've done. And essentially, we're attributing the things of God to man, which is not good. And so what Daniel warns him and says, look, I'm giving you this warning. If you can heed godly counsel, humble yourself on your own, during your own time, before God humbles you. Notice the time period. 12 months later, he was given an entire year to get right, to acknowledge that Daniel spoke the truth, that Daniel was trying to help him. He was not harming him. He was giving him good counsel. And so often it's so hard for people that are prideful to hear good counsel, because it sounds like you're telling them to stop taking credit for what they think that they've done. And so you're telling them, look, you're on a dangerous path. The fact that you can work and achieve things and speak well and obtain money, those are all gifts from the Most High. So it would behoove you to give glory to the Most High before he rips them from you and humbles you in an absolutely crushing way. Nebuchadnezzar goes around like an animal for 7 years. An animal, imagine that. You're out in the fields acting like a cow, eating grass, relieving yourself in the open field. That's how you live now. So, what do we take from this? Humble yourself before God humbles you in a greater way than you can ever imagine. See, we don't always have to learn the hard way, but some of us eventually do, but we don't have to. If we can just listen to good counsel and not have to figure it out on our own and say, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm fine. Well, 12 months later, he wasn't fine. And so, Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. There's the silver lining, though. He was given grace even in his insanity. If you will look up to heaven and acknowledge that the sovereignty of the Lord is his, he'll restore you. And he did. And it looks as though Nebuchadnezzar is a worshiper of Yahweh after all of this happened. And towards the end of the chapter, for he acknowledges that he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So, that's one example. Humble yourself before you're humbled. Now, let's go to Acts 12, 19 through 24. Acts 12. Here we go now. Acts 12. Come on. Here we go. Acts 12, 19 through 24. Then Herod went from Judea to Caesarea and stayed there. He had been quarreling with the people of Tyre and Sidon. They now joined together and sought an audience with him. After securing the port of Balstus, a trusted personal servant of the king, they asked for peace because they depended on the king's country for their food supply. On the appointed day, Herod, wearing his royal robe, sitting on his throne and delivering a public address to the people, they shouted, "This is the voice of a God, not of a man." Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, an angel of the Lord struck him down, and he was eaten by worms and died. But the word of God continued to spread and flourish. So, we are going to look at this particular scenario, which is much different than the other one. Much different. Because there was no time given here. You understand? Nebuchadnezzar was given time. He was given a year to get right. Then he was given 7 years to acknowledge and humble himself. Herod gets none of this. And first of all, he's in his robes. He's on his throne. He's giving an address to a bunch of people. And they shout, "This is the voice of a God, not of a man." Interesting. When all the people around you are saying something about you that is incorrect and is very prideful and arrogant and boasting about your greatness over giving praise to God, there's a multitude more people here now instead of Nebuchadnezzar alone on a roof. And so because of this, now there can be arguments about, well, this was during the time of Christ and the furtherment of the church. That's all valid. I'm not going to deny you there. But Herod is given no time. He doesn't immediately give a point check to these people and he's done. He's dead. An angel of the Lord strikes him down. He dies a horrible death and is eaten from the inside out by worms. Terrible. So what do you take from this? Not everybody is given a long period of time to humble themselves. So it behooves you to do an on-the-spot correction of yourself or of the people that are saying things about you and giving credit to you when they should be giving credit to God. So Herod was made an example of. You want to let these people think that you're a God when you're not, and not correct them and say, no, 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 please don't call me that. There's only one true God, and that's the Almighty. Herod paid the ultimate price. So you have two extremes here. A long period of time and an absolute short period of time. We don't know how long you'll be given to humble yourself. It would behoove you to be quick about it. Don't be long about it. Be quick about it. So, let's go to Proverbs 29. We're going to do a couple things in Proverbs here. Proverbs is a book of wisdom, so we're going to do a couple things here. Proverbs 29:23, we're going to read there. Pride brings a person low, but the lowly in spirit gain honor. Kind of the Nebuchadnezzar, right? It brought him low, and once he was low, he acknowledged God, and his spirit was honored, and he was brought back to his place, right? Pride will always bring you low. It will do you no good, because pride is always about bringing up yourself and making other people want to congratulate you. Look what I did. Look what this. Look what here. I did that. I built that. Aren't I great? It's all about you. It's man-centered. Pride is man-centered, or whatever, whatever it is. It's about you. Now, Proverbs 18:12. Before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. Herod's heart was haughty. He was boastful, arrogant, and didn't correct the people, and his downfall was swift. Don't be like either of these men. Recognize, this is the most important part of what I'm telling you tonight. Recognize that you're prideful. Recognize it and address it before it's too late. Guys, I love you, and God bless.